What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Niners Talk. As always, I'm John, joined by my brother Tim and my brother from another brother, Niner,
That
brother,
joke just never gets old.
Brian.
It just doesn't stick.
Let's talk a little Niners. How are you feeling today, boys?
I thought we were going to talk about the billionaire cage match between Elon Musk and Zuckerberg.
No, we don't.
No?
Those guys more press.
Okay, that sounds good. Maybe we can make a prediction at the end of that. Since we don't do predictions on football, I do think that billionaire cage match is something all of us have wanted to talk about several years now. We'll make a prediction on that. Anyway,
It's nerds
I
pillow
thought-
fighting.
I thought we were. I thought we were going to talk about the cruise ship that crashed into San Francisco Harbor this week.
I didn't.
Um,
Was that? I did not hear about that. I've been not catching up on my news, at least not that kind of news.
I don't know if it was Princess Cruise or Carnival, but it was on its way up to Alaska. And I guess I don't know if the harbor master was pulling the boat into one of the harbors where it docks, and then it crashed. And then there's a hole now in this Princess Cruise. And so it probably can't go up to Alaska anymore, I'm going to guess. So you just
Those pre-dinner drinks just get out of hand, and too many margaritas, and look what happens.
Well, given the
Too many
Titanic was in the news
martinis.
recently,
Yeah.
we don't want to have holes in ships.
Well, we
Ships
don't.
are bad.
Speaking of holes, I think we've dug ourselves into a hole with this
Yeah.
with these topics. So, John, why don't you
Let-
dig us out when we can talk about the 49ers?
Well, let's talk Niners. So now that we've covered how we're feeling in general, how are we feeling about the Niners at this point in time? We're getting close to training camp. How are we feeling?
We are just a few days away from training camp. Rookies, I think, are going to report on the week of the 16th, and then the vets come in. And you know what? We're also less than 30 days away from the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game. So
Right.
it's on the horizon. It's getting closer. I think,
Okay.
how am I feeling? I'm just feeling like football is coming. It'll get here. It'll get here. Kind of like a long road trip, but you're going to get there.
Brian?
I'm feeling positive. I guess there's not really much to talk about with the Niners other than training camp, but yeah, I'm feeling good.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good about the Niners. It was one of those weeks, just wasn't that great. So, but I'm feeling good about the Niners. And that's what this podcast is about. Not John's troubles at hitting a golf ball straight. It's called Niners Talk. So
That'll be
this week, we're talking defense. Big D. Last year, they were number one. This year, they got a lot of people back, but there are some changes, most notably at defensive coordinator. So let's just talk generally real quick about the D. I had said in the previous podcast that I thought the D wasn't going to be as overpowering as the offense. Just from what I can see, the offense has so many weapons, but I never got the sense. It was weird last year. They were the number one defense, but you didn't get the sense that they were like the number one defense because there wasn't like a guy. I mean, Fred's kind of the guy, but there's not like a guy like Micah Parsons or, what the Eagles kind of did, but they were just so efficient, almost the best way to put it. So this year, I'm a little more hesitant on the D than I am on the offense. What are you thinking, Tim?
I think when you talk about dominant defenses in the history of the NFL, obviously the 85 Bears is one of the first that comes to mind. You think of the great Steeler defenses of the 70s. You think of the Raven in early 2000s. I don't think we see a dominant defense anymore. I think the rules have changed. I think the game has changed so that when you're talking about a number one defense, I think you are talking about efficiency. I think you are talking about a collective group rather than, as you said, a Micah Parsons or a Lawrence Taylor back in the day. I just think the game has changed. And plus, I don't think the 49ers on defense have that one personality that the media just kind of flocks to. I mean, Bosa, we've seen him interviewed. He's very quiet. Fred will usually have something to say. You'll see he doesn't stalk it on the field. So I just think that's where we're just in a different game than we are 10, 20 years ago. So that dominating defense, I think, is all about efficiency. You give your offense short fields to work with. You limit the opportunities of the offense as best you can. So I just think that's where we're at. That's my 2 cents.
Brian, what are you thinking? Just in general about the D.
with the addition of Steven Wilkes, it'll be, I mean, obviously, I think he's like a safety or defensive backs coach. So I think you're going to see a lot of improvement there and working with those young guys. I do think overall, though, the defense, you're right, it probably was a step behind last year, although they were still pretty dominant. But they weren't like the level I think that Kyle Shanahan wants them to be. So I remember hearing something about that in some like presser over once the season ended, that the defense wasn't like as dominant as it could have been probably since the 2019 season. So I think they're looking to get back to that. And I think with these, and I think they'll come too.
Well, I think the idea, because I mean, obviously they're the number one D, and this kind of gets us into our next subject is in 2019, it was just a sack monster in terms of how many, like Armstead had 10, Bosa had, I think, 12 in his rookie year. You had Buckner. I mean, that defensive line, and Ford, before he got hurt, was playing pretty well. They just went out and beat up quarterbacks like Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers. And it was just, that I think is what I'm looking at is like, wow, that defense was scary. You're talking about two pretty awesome defenses. And I just think that's where it gets a little bit off, where you have that sack mentality that wasn't there last year. Well, they had a ton of picks and great linebacker play. But anyway, let's get into D-line. Obviously, the man is Bosa. Last year, I did the Bosa challenge that I made up completely on the fly, which was every time Nick Bosa got a sack, I would run the total that he had for the year. I went, obviously, it was really easy the first week. He had one sack. I ran one. Towards the end of it,
grass.
he was on a nice steady. You get one, they get another, and I got up to like 1 and 2. We were up to 6 and 7, and then he had a 3-sack performance where I think he went from 11 and a half to 14 and a half. And I ran 14 and a half miles. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. and I really hope that Nick Bosa keeps stacking people. But this year, I'm going to give it one more try, see how far I can get, see how far Nick Bosa can get. It's obviously gets pretty tough in the November, December time frame. Tim did one with me. I did the 10 miler, but yeah, it was a 14 and a half miler. It was not a lot of fun.
I mean, I'm just thinking if you want to do, maybe you could trade out miles for something else. I don't know what that is. We could do kilometers. We could go to the metric system.
Well, let's start with miles. And if I need to pull the metric system in, I will.
No, I like the kilometers. I'm going to say the line that John went European on us at some point. When he decides that, yeah.
Anyways, getting back on the subjects, obviously defensive player of the year last year.
Yep. 18 and a half sacks. Yep.
Really, obviously an amazing person. One thing on Bosa, we just hope and pray and like candles on is he doesn't get hurt. He's been really durable, except for that freaky accident on the Field of Horrors that is the Meadowlands. But I'm just really curious because he always comes back a little bit better. What he could possibly be better at, but just don't know. Maybe gets 20.
Here's the one statistic I found. It was just on Pro Football Reference, and we talk about his sacks. But according to Pro Football Reference, he had 48 quarterback hits. The only guy that's close to this, again, according to Pro Football Reference, was Amenahu, who had 16. So 48 times he hit the quarterback. I don't think I'd want to get hit by Nick Bosa, but I'm sure that there are players out there who have been hit by Nick Bosa multiple times. I'm sure it's not fun. But that was the statistic that blew me away. That's the kind of pressure this guy gets. And that's once in a generational defensive player.
While getting double teamed.
Exactly.
So,
and probably held several times.
Yes. Brian, any other platitudes for Mr. Bosa?
He's awesome. He is a generational talent, but aren't they looking to re-sign him? That's something that 49er fans, I can assume he's just going to get signed and we don't have any issues. We'll keep on buying his Nick Bosa jerseys, but I just hope that there's no issues there. Do you guys think he'll make more than, let's say, like an Aaron Donald or something like that? Isn't Aaron Donald the highest paid defensive player in the league?
Personally, yes, I think he's worth more than Aaron Donald. I think the Rams, if you look at that situation, are just in salary cap hell right now. I think both players mean so much to their team, but I think just Bosa's just got much more overall talent on the defensive side of the ball. The way that the GM, John Lynch, and Parag Mathe, who have constructed the deals over the last few years, they've just been consistent in getting players re-signed. I mean, like Debo last year. So I think Bosa's going to get his money. I would say it's going to happen sometime in training camp of the preseason. He's obviously not going to play much, if at all, in the preseason. So I don't see we haven't heard anything from either side saying we're going to hold out for this or that, or you have to do it this way. So I'm pretty confident they're going to get a deal done.
Yeah, their mode was right before training camp. And I'm thinking it's probably going to be a little bit like TJ Watt money. I think Bosa also just wants to win. He wants to continue to be part of this team and realize that, hey, if I take a bit of a haircut, I'm still going to get paid generational wealth. He doesn't seem to have any entourages or anything like that. You barely hear from the guy. He's like a football monk almost.
Yeah.
So I just think they're going to sign him. He's going to be a Niner for a really long time. And that'll be that. Where it gets interesting on the D-line is who's the complement to him. And obviously they're still paying, I think there's still salary cap stuff on D Ford.
There
D
is.
Ford was obviously the one they had looked to do. But who's going to be that guy on the end that is going to make people think, okay, if we double team Nick Bosa, we're going to have issues with this other guy. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I think it could be Drake Jackson. It could also be Eric Armstead. If they're able to get Hargraves in the middle and move Armstead out more to his traditional role of defensive end and find somebody else who can play in his spot in defensive tackle, that might be a pretty lethal turbo group that you kind of see is how, of course, Eric moves these guys around. But I really like to see Drake Jackson take that next step in year 2. But Brian, who are you thinking would have it on the D-line that frees Nick Bosa up to wreak havoc and make me run miles?
You are bringing up Drake Jackson, and I was thinking about him that he's probably going to have to step up big time. I think his rookie year, he was there, but he wasn't. I think he got hurt a little bit. And so I do want to see him kind of produce. And I think the staff has a confidence in him. And I think so. Who's backing him up? I think who's that other guy? I can't remember. Is it Kerry Hyder? Who's backing up that side? So he's a veteran.
I think Kerry Hyder's more in the middle.
He's played some he's played some defensive ends as well. The Niners, I mean, I know we always like to talk about, okay, Bosa will be on the end where he's most dominant, but in defensive coordinators past, they've really shuffled these guys around to keep the offensive line and the quarterbacks, I'm guessing, as well. They don't want you to know where they're coming from. They don't want you to know if they're going to stunt. So I think we also have to keep that in mind, that it's constantly in flux, which is exactly the way the 49ers want it.
Yeah. Which kind of brings us to our big time free agent signing, which I was stunned at that the Niners went out and did, which is Hargraves, which they plucked right out of Philadelphia. My first thought was, I really feel for DeForest Buckner. But my second thought was, that's a really good signing because I watched him in the NFC Championship and he's really good.
He's a force. He is a force.
He is a force. And that move, I thought, was a little bit of pushing chips in the middle, but it really might be where we see the 2019 defensive line kind of come back to the way it was when now you have Bosa, who's way outside of his rookie year. We're in year 4 or 5. I completely lost count at this point with him. Armstead's obviously back. Hargrave. And then you just hopefully find that missing piece, which could be Drake Jackson. But Tim, what were you thinking on the Hargrave signing?
Well, like you, when the alert came across on my phone, I kind of had to like, wait, we got that guy? First of all, it was like, am I reading this correctly? Is this a prank? And then the second thing was, how did they pull that one off? So it says to me, obviously, 2 things. One, the 49ers recognize, 49er organization and coaches recognize that we did have a problem. If there was a weak point in the Niners defense last year, it was in the middle. and goes to confirm that, unfortunately, Javon Kinlaw is just, they don't have the confidence that he's ever going to be the player that they thought he was going to be when they drafted him with the DeForest Buckner trade. But I think going back to, I'm about to contradict myself here. I know I just said the 49ers, they like to have players in flux when they're shuffling them in and out. But if you look at that line of Bosa, Armstead, and Drake Jackson, if he can make the jump over, and now their latest free agent signing, that is a formidable group. We know the Niners love to hoard defensive linemen, so keeping those guys fresh and rotating them, and maybe you bring in a Hyder, maybe you give a series off just to catch his breath. I mean, that's precisely the philosophy that the 49ers have had ever since Lynch and Shanahan came in, is to have this depth on the defensive line. You keep the pressure on the offense. As I said before, make them get the 3 and outs that gives your offense a great field position. They're just playing the odds on that one. And the Niners have been consistently competitive. So that philosophy obviously has worked.
Yeah, Brian, what are you thinking about the Hargrave when you saw the Hargrave signing?
No, that was awesome. I was just in the same situation. I didn't believe it at first, but no, it was awesome to see that we got him. You guys talking about spelling Bosa. The Niners picked up, they've been talking about this on KMBR out here, but there was that guy, Cleveland Farrell, that guy from the Raiders. So,
Oh,
he
yeah.
was probably, yeah, he was in that same draft with Nick Bosa. I think he got down.
He was. Yeah.
And nobody does reclamation projects like Clearsco Sarek.
He'll just scream at you enough until you become a reclamation project.
Yeah. To get a first round pick from 2019, it was 2 spots behind.
No, that definitely could be a sleeper. That could be a diamond in the rough that just needs a better organization. We've seen that throughout the league. We've seen that in league history. No, that's a great point, Brian. I really like that pickup as well. Well, to the Raiders. So,
who's the guy we got from the Texans? Was that a Menahue?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was on my head.
Where did a Menahue go to?
Menahue.
Are we using the Google?
Kansas
Spell
City.
Bosa. I'm like,
Kansas City. Oh, you beat me,
that's
Brian.
Yeah, but I think we've seen that. Like Charles Menahue is one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of talent, but he was in the wrong organization. I think the other guy could be a very big replacement for him. Brian, when you said spelling Bosa, I was like, dude, it's Bosa. How hard is Bosa?
I think I've seen his name enough to know that it's spelled Bosa.
Yeah. So anyway, well, it's not just D-line, it's also linebackers. And that starts with the guy in the middle, Fred Warner. And watching SportsCenter this morning, apparently he's been ranked the top linebacker by all of his peers. Everybody says he's the dude. There's no doubt to me that Fred's the heartbeat of that defense. He's just gotten better every year. He's more confident. When Richard Sherman left, he really took over that role.
I think you also have to give credit to K'Waun Williams when he was with the 49ers in 19. I think Fred was in his second year. I think he definitely from Sherman, but I also think K'Waun had a lot to do with how he approaches the game, how he plays the game.
Was it K'Waun Williams? Was it a different guy, the legendary guy whose name escapes you right now?
Oh, probably it's escaping me too. It's just another thing we'll have to Google.
Oh, it's Cole Alexander.
Good Lord, we need to edit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought K'Waun. Yeah, I thought K'Waun was like a defensive
Excuse me.
or something. Or like,
Yeah, you are absolutely right, and I apologize. I was getting my players mixed up. Yeah,
Talking
that
about
one's on me.
quarterbacks are next.
I know we're talking
late.
linebackers, so
So, since we know Fred's awesome,
yeah.
in the pantheon of linebackers for the 49ers, would you put him above Patrick Willis or below?
Oh boy, Brian, do you want to go first?
yeah, I love Patrick Willis. So Fred Warner's going to have to be below him. I have Patrick Willis's jersey. I even bought it with his age. It's not the cheap iron-on. So he's got to be a step below in my mind. But I'm only saying that because Patrick Willis is one of my favorite players. So that's
Fair.
That's my biased opinion.
That's a tough one for me. Patrick Willis was just a phenomenal linebacker who I think could hit you into next week. Just some of the hits. Go back to the NFC Championship game against the Giants where he was just all over the field and he was just delivering blow after blow. I think he's just, as a linebacker, he was an absolute bully. That was his domain, and entered at your own risk. But I think back to one play in the divisional playoff against the Cowboys where I had never seen a linebacker cover a wide receiver 20, 30 yards down the field and cover him well. And that's the athleticism that Warner has that I don't see Willis doing that. I'll give a slight nod to Fred. Yeah. Go ahead.
He's not as stocky. He's not as stocky as Patrick Willis. And so definitely he does have the ability to drift downfield and can cover like a receiver.
I'll give you the ultimate test. Could Fred Warner cover Travis Kelce? I don't know if anybody can cover Travis Kelce, but I would like Fred in that matchup better than I would like against Willis. Then again, I think it's just today's game that we're playing to.
Yeah, I'm going to give the nod to Patrick right now until Fred does something that we just haven't ever seen. But it's also, they're so different in terms of how the game's played now that Fred, who's a smaller linebacker, really has to get on his horse to cover some of these guys and does a phenomenal job of it. And then also has to do so much, just a ton of stuff in terms of getting the defense to be in the right place in the right time.
Yeah. I was thinking, John, how like the game is a little bit different now. I think as Tim was saying, now than it was when like Willis and Bowman were playing. So let me ask you guys a question. Who do you think is more impactful? Willis and Bowman as linebackers or Greenlaw and Fred Warner?
I hate these questions.
I'll go first on that one. If I were a running team, I wouldn't want any part of Willis and Bowman. If I were passing, I would want Willis and Bowman all day long. On the flip side of the coin, if I'm a passing team, I do not want to see Warner and Dre Greenlaw. If I am a running team, I get past the defensive line, I may have Champ. But we've been really fortunate to have those kind of duos. And I just really hope we can keep the duo going longer than Willis and Bowman have, because Navarro got hurt so badly in the Seattle game. Tim, since you hate these questions.
No, you know what, John? I'm going to borrow your question and just say I'm going to completely plagiarize it and say you gave a perfect answer. I think that's spot on.
So, but we did lose one linebacker, and who was honestly one of my favorites because he played with such abandon. He came into the Niners. It's kind of a little bit of an unknown quantity after he hurt his knee, which was Azeez Al-Shaair.
Yeah.
And obviously thrilled for him to go to the Titans. He's going to get money. He's going to run their D. But obviously, who's going to take over Azeez's role? Because he was a great backup linebacker for Fred, but also great weak side linebacker as well.
At first glance, I think it's Flanagan Falls. I think he's had the experience in the system, knows it well. And we're also predicting that the 49ers are going to play a lot of 4-3. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I think the Niners are going to be employing more defensive back against these spread offenses, the offenses that the Rams like to run, like the Cardinals of last year. I don't know what their new head coach, but when Cliff Kingsbury being there, I wouldn't want a 4-3. I'd want the most athletic coverage folks I can get. But I do see Flanagan Falls probably stepping into that role, that spot that Al-Shaair had last year.
Brian?
I have no opinion because I really don't know the depth chart behind those guys. So I'll say yes. I agree with you, Tim. 100%.
All right.
I would not be surprised to see Oren Burks or one of these rookie practice squad guys come in. I mean, Demetrius is great. He's a special teams ace. But I wouldn't be surprised to see someone who's been under the tutelage of Fred and Dre, who comes in and is able to take that Azeez position. Similar to how Quan brought Fred up, Fred could bring another guy up. Which brings us into kind of a hybrid between cornerback and linebacker, which is another signing that happened about a guy that I didn't really know much about, but I think it's a good signing, and that's Isaiah Oliver. Obviously, we've had Quan Williams, who was our nickelback for a while.
Not Quan. I just want to be the guy who is able to differentiate between the two. Sorry, John. Please keep going.
And then Jimmy Ward last year filled in, but obviously Quan went off to Denver and Jimmy went off to the Texans with D'Amico. So that brings in Isaiah, who's a much bigger more physical player. So it will be interesting, to your point earlier, of how the Niners play rather than playing 4-3, how they use this nickelback as potential hybrid linebacker. Thoughts, Tim?
No, I like the signing. It sort of reminds me of a player the Niners had many years ago. He was a strong safety, but you could put him right up near the line of scrimmage, and you could definitely, like, I think he was the first hybrid linebacker, and that was Jeff Fuller. And this individual reminds me a lot of them. Again, I see him kind of like on a 3rd and 3, a 3rd and 5. If you're going to run a screen, he's got the ability and a cognitive awareness to make the play when teams are trying to spread you out a little bit. He can cover the field well. So, yeah, I like the signing. I think he could be somebody you could also bring in maybe a 2nd and long on a blitz where he can line up or fake. I think he could basically pair very well with Hufanga. We've seen Hufanga sometimes come in on a blitz as well. So I see a lot the Niners can do with this guy. There's a lot of just exciting, creative ways that they can not only put pressure on the quarterback, but cover the field.
Brian, any thoughts on Mr. Osler?
Yeah, I mean, he came from, where was he on before? Didn't he play with Carolina to some degree, right? So I think,
No, he was with the Falcons. But Wilkes knows him well
I
because they're
don't-
in the same division.
yeah, I think it's a strong signing. I don't remember too much of the plays, but I think he was playing in that game when the Niners played the Falcons. And I remember seeing his name. That's my only kind of knowledge of him because he had a strong game that day when the Niners lost there. So I think it's a good signing. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of goes into the cornerbacks. The last year's signing was obviously Mooney Ward, but who I didn't know a lot about. But then when he started playing, this guy's really good.
This guy could play.
And we had him and Emmanuel on both sides. And unfortunately, Emmanuel went down with the injury. Now he's in Detroit, which brings Lenore, who played very steady towards the end. But to me, and you guys are more than happy to disagree, this will probably be the weakest position group on defense. Because after that, you've got Ambry Thomas, Womack, and it's just like, and then a league that's pass happy with receivers that can burn.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy. So that's my big concern this year is how that cornerback room is going to do and grow.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about Ward. Lenore, I saw a lot of growth, but there's a big drop off after those two. Brian, your thoughts on the cornerbacks?
One person who I wish could always stay healthy was that guy Jason Barrett, who he looked like a talented. I mean, he still looks talented, but he just always seemed to get hit with that injury bug, and it seemed to happen like early in the season or something like that. And then that's one guy I wish just we could have seen him to his fullest potential and stay healthy with the Niners, but. I think overall, like in terms of their depth chart of who they have, so Lenore on one side and then was it Javarius Ward on the other, really strong, I think, in terms of the starters. One person who I kind of wish I would love to see more because he had a really good game against the Rams in the last game of the 21 season where he had that pick, Ambry Thomas. That's one guy also who I would love to see more of him. And I don't know if he was injured last year or if he was just outplayed kind of on the depth chart, but that's one guy I want to see kind of step up and show up a little bit more too out there.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on Thomas. I thought when he made the play to beat the Rams in overtime at the end of the regular season in 2021, I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, he now has confidence. He's going to play with confidence. And to your point, Brian, the next year he came in and just did not take a step forward. There were other players that were surpassing him. And I think that just my own personal opinion, I think that was one of the key reasons they brought in Ward. They needed a strong corner. I don't think the 49ers have had a true shutdown. I think Ward is about as close as it gets, but I don't think they've had a true shutdown corner since Richard Sherman was here in 2019. That being said, I agree with you, John, that this is probably the weakest point of the 49ers defense. Yeah, I think that the Niners, again, going back to their philosophy, is they're going to load up on the D line and to some extent the linebackers. But the D line is really where they want to keep rotating people out, continue that pressure. Because when you get pressure, you get an errant throw, you get a tip. And that's where I think they believe they can be successful on defense, that they are able to apply that pressure. When they don't, I think if we go to kind of the asterisk here, as I call it, 2020, you see with the lack of a pass rush when Bosa was out with his ACL, and they had lost others, and the Niners just couldn't seem to stop much of anything that year. So if the D line is successful, then the cornerbacks can hold their own. If the D line goes through injuries, I think we've got a long season on our hands defensively.
Yeah. So yeah, the quarterbacks, hopefully, we'll see the preseason as that comes up, some step up with that group. But we'll see what happens. Position group, which is safety, and probably actually one of my favorite players on the Niners, Talanoa Hufanga.
Yeah.
I love Talanoa Hufanga. He plays with his hair on fire, and you can actually see it because he's got such long hair. He just is
Foot on bump.
has such a nose for the ball. Just goes and whacks people around. Even in the preseason game, he laid out some poor cowboy last year. He's great. And then you've got Gibson, who's probably going to be his last year, and then the new rookie Brown.
Yeah. John,
Yeah.
I think I need to say that the hair on fire joke was probably the best joke of the entire podcast series thus far. So I think that we need to commend you for the hair on fire because Hufanga has long hair. I just got it.
Okay. Well, I thought the spelling Bosa was pretty good too. So. But yeah, he is my favorite player on the night. It reminds me so much of Polamalu. He just goes out there and just plays.
Yeah.
And looks like he's having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
So-
As you said, John, we watched them, I think, in the first preseason game of 2021. I believe, I think it was against the Cowboys, where we saw this guy just flying around the ball, and we're like, who's that? And he was kind of in and out of the lineup, but then it's the divisional playoff. They're in Green Bay. There's the block punt, and who picks it up? Hufanga. And then you go to last year. They're playing the Rams. Pivotal game for the Niners. They needed the win as their season. They were struggling. Niners are up 8. It's late in the fourth quarter. Stafford throws, and who's there? Hufanga. Like I said, he's just got a nose for the ball. I think he just got great instincts, and Niners just got an absolute gem of a safety in that draft. So
Another fifth
absolutely
rounder.
a lot of fun. Yep. There's something about that round. I think that's when the Niners, when they were drafting this year, it's like, oh, don't worry. We pick up so many people in those rounds. We'll be fine. Who needs the first and the second? We've got the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So,
So they don't want
it'd
to.
be
They
a lot
don't want
of fun
to
to
pay.
watch.
They don't want to pay first. They want to. I mean, all their money
Well-
right now is going towards your skill players. So then they're not
But,
trying to
I
pay
mean,
first round.
but-
They're not trying to pay first round
and
money.
And that is a great point because, the third rounders, when you start in the third round, you're paying them less. You've got more maneuverability against the salary cap. So I know we're supposed to be talking about safety. So, John, if you want to bring me back, I tend to go off in these little different directions.
Sure.
And you guys have to
We'll
kind of corral me.
let Brian give his thought about safeties.
We should, yes.
Other than Gibson and Hufanga, I think the starters are absolutely awesome. I think Gibson provided some insight and leadership and guidance to Hufanga. So I think he's playing a whole lot better. I think Hufanga also is it Polamalu, Troy Polamalu? He's giving him, he's advising him as well, right? Yeah. And they both went to USC.
Yeah,
I've
traded
read
them
that.
in the offseason.
Yeah. So I'm absolutely, just like you guys, ecstatic for the both of them. And I hope Gibson can give us one more quality year and we can win something for him over here. So I'd love to see that.
So, Tim, this is an interesting question because I've probably seen it, but I don't really remember it. Would be if the Niners do start using a 3 safety set, which they've talked about a little bit.
Mhm.
What does that exactly look like? Does a quarterback come off the field? Does a nickelback?
Could be either. And I think that's when you get somebody like a Hufanga, he can sort of play that hybrid linebacker role. So if you need somebody, and Fred can easily cover either a tight end or the slot receiver. So there's a lot of different things you can go to in the 3 safety set there. So it just depends on how you want to line them up. You can line up with a 3 down lineman, kind of an elephant linebacker, field, kind of roaming the defensive line. Your two linebackers in the back. So, and then maybe 5 DBs, and they could be a combination of corners and safeties. So I think it's about protecting the kind of the deep middle, or excuse me, it's kind of the mid to deep middle on the field there, which is where I think a lot of teams like the Seahawks with Adams and their other wide receivers that like to go to. So that's a possibility.
You kind of raised a point, a little bit of a segue to our next subject, which would be the defensive coordinator. But obviously, the Niners on the offense have this kind of skillless mentality, or like you like basketball, positionless basketball. I will be really interested to see how Steve Wilks deploys some of these guys, other than the D line and some of the linebackers who are always going to be in, like Fred.
Yeah.
This positionless kind of hybrid roles of D, because if you're a quarterback, you have to literally go out there and go, okay, who are all these? Where are they all going?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough, especially as Wilks maybe bringing in a lot more pressure from the edges on guys like Oliver and Brown and Funga. Yeah, it's going to be, this defense could be really interesting to watch, and a little bit different than we've been used to under D'Amico and Robert Saleh. So, which brings me to the defensive coordinator, which is Steve Wilks. I thought it was a good hire. There didn't really feel to me there was a guy in the wings after Saleh left and after D'Amico left. So I was glad that they got Steve Wilks, who obviously has a lot of experience, and they still kept. Obviously, he interviewed with Korsaric. He's that guy at the D line. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to deploy him. I think we'll see a lot more blitzing than we have seen in the past from the Niners. Brian, what are you thinking,
Wilks,
Mr. Wilks?
Yeah, I think he proved himself because he wasn't the interim coach at Carolina, and
He was.
Carolina had like he had a really good. They had a really good end of the season after, I can't remember their first coach, but when he got canned. So yeah, I think it was a good hire. I don't think they were ready to bring anyone in house. I don't think there was someone apparent like D'Amico Ryan who was going to step up, but yeah, good hire from what I can see. He's saying all the right things. And I think they're probably going to change a few things around on the defense, but I think overall, I think it'll be good. I think one thing I read also was that unlike D'Amico and Robert Saleh, he's going to call the game up from up top. So,
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so he
right.
has a bird's eye
Yeah.
view. Yeah. He has a bird's eye view of the game, probably a different attitude, and trying to, I guess, look at the game more holistically and not be so, I guess, emotional if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines calling games. But yeah, that'll be something interesting too that we haven't seen in a while, to have someone call the game up there. So,
Yeah, like Fangio used to do.
Yeah.
yeah.
Tim, what are you thinking about Mr. Wilks?
Well, I mean, I like the hire. Like you said, John, I don't think the Niners looked at their current coaching staff and said, okay, here's the next man up that they did with Ryan. I think that he's going to come in. He's not going to, frankly, he's not going to reinvent the wheel. The Niners know the system they like. Otherwise, he's not going to come in and just say, we're going to do this, and it's going to be a totally different animal than it has been the last few years. I don't see that. Yeah, I think it's very possible that he blitzes a lot more. I think he'll put his own spin on things. He'll few things, but it's not going to be night and day. But Brian bringing up a great point on that he'll be in the press box as opposed to on the field, which is something we haven't seen for, as you said, John, I think maybe since Fangio. I could be wrong, but it obviously Ryan and Saleh loved being on the field. So I think that also says the 49ers believe that they don't need kind of the guy right having those face-to-face conversations. So they trust the organization. They trust the players they have down there and the coaching staff down there as well. So yeah, I think overall, just bottom line, they're going to continue the system. Couple tweaks here and there, but nothing, no 90-degree, 180 turns are going to happen with the Niners defense. It's going to be the same philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings me to making our sponsorship dollars, which is stuff we bought on Amazon this week. So why don't we start with Tim? And obviously the links are going to be down below. But Tim, what'd you buy on Amazon this week?
Now, this is what I bought, and this is for family, right? This is not just for what I bought.
Yeah,
I'm just
whatever's
making
on
that
the
just okay. All right, just whatever. I didn't know if there were rules around this. All right. Well, this week is brought to you by. I See, this is what my daughter bought. I can't even pronounce it. Shive Yog Blackhead Peel Off Face Mask. I kid you not. I come downstairs sometimes and I jump like, oh my God, you have a huge bug on your face or you have a black eye. No, it's this mask that she wears and it's supposed to do it. But not to say that's the only thing you can get. You can also go with Braley's aloe vera eye mask. So I got that, those two going for me.
So that's it? Just those two on Amazon this week?
Oh, do you want me to go further? I just didn't know how much time we had. Well, if they're paying us by the hour, sure, I'll keep going.
Keep going. You want this week?
So we've got I don't even know what this is, so I'm just gonna skip it. We've got the low dose aspirin. That was also, no, seriously. Okay, what is it? Okay, that's another facial. My daughter bought 3 facial masks on Amazon this week. No wonder her allowance is pretty much near the bottom.
Yeah. Well,
So this week is brought to you by, frankly, a lot of crap that I didn't know we bought, don't know how it works, and don't know why it exists in my house. So with that, I just want to go to somewhere else.
all right. Masks and low dose lights.
Mask and low dose aspirins.
Cool. Brian?
I didn't buy anything this week, but I know my wife also bought something similar to what Leah bought. So that would be that facial mask they want to have a spa day tomorrow inside the house. So I think they did buy a few of those things. I don't exactly know what it is, but I know it came in the mail. And some nails, something you put on your nails. I think we're just getting ready for our trip for Disneyland. But I myself bought a pair of New Brooks shoes, which is my favorite running shoe of all time. If you can kind of see this, but it's the black glycerin GTS stability
Oh, you're a glycerin guy. Mm-hmm.
which I will be wearing at the San Francisco Marathon in 2 weeks. So that is my
Nice.
one big splurge this week, what I bought.
Cool.
John, what did you get?
Well, I definitely went down kind of a weird rabbit hole of cleaning supplies. So I bought the two-piece
go ahead.
dryer vent cleaner kit that you can attach to your vacuum, sucks out all the lint from your dryer vent.
Yeah, it's good.
It helps prevent forest fires. I also bought John Boo's Mystery Butcher Block oil because we have this island in the middle of our kitchen and we needed to get some oil to keep it nice and nice.
Did not know that product even existed.
That's what happens
Hey,
when
I
you
got a
do
question.
wire cutter. You get all this stuff.
I have a question.
Then, because I have
about Middle Island butcher blocks, do you actually put stuff on the butcher block to cut, or do you put like a chopping board first on top of your butcher block?
No, we put a cutting board on top of the butcher block.
That's what I thought. Okay. Just wondering. I know some people who actually put stuff on there, they chop it. So I just wanted
The amount of stuff that's probably on there would want to boost my immune system. I might do it.
What else you got, John?
So I got an electric air pump for blowing up pool floaty tools.
All right. So I think there's
I had
one
that.
notable. Yeah, there's one notable trend. There's definitely the spa feature going on with my daughter and Brian's wife and his daughter. But there was also a definite cleaning theme with whether it's your face, whether it's your dryer vent. I think we definitely hit a vibe this week.
And then last but not least, inspired
more.
by Tim from last week, I bought a new Tesla air filter. And I was curious because Tim has been telling me sometimes the Tesla smells like old tennis shoes. I'm like, my Tesla never smelled like old tennis shoes. So I went to put in the old air filter. I never had an air filter ever to smell like old tennis shoes. I would just suck it in the outside air. So now I have an air filter.
Oh.
So yeah, Amazon was here quite a bit this week.
You never had an air filter before? You're
Not in this car.
Wow.
Nope. Was never there. Just like,
I'm-
oh, that's odd.
I'm surprised they never installed it. That's kind of weird. So
I just know it wasn't
Just
there.
missed
It's
it.
not one of those things I can look at my children and go, why did you take the air filter out of the car? Or headphones or a power iPhone power cord. I know exactly it's them. So,
oh man,
Well,
Elon Musk
Elon-
missed the quality. Elon Musk missed that.
yeah,
Installing that air
I'm sure he's out there just making sure he's got all the air filters in after he tweets. So
Oh, what about
Anyway,
Threads?
on-
Are you guys on
on-
Threads yet?
Yeah. And
I know,
Niners
I
talked
checked
about
it out.
Reds as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to justify that it doesn't look like Twitter when it looks exactly like Twitter. Like this looks like Twitter.
Okay, before we go, I did ask at the beginning of the show, because pretty favorite words of all of us is billionaire cage match. Who do you like between Zuckerberg and Musk? I'm going Zuckerberg.
Can they build things? Because if they can build things,
They
they go with Elon.
They build up their egos, John. They build up their egos.
Are they allowed to hire other people to fight for them?
You're going, but you're thinking like Musk. You're going to the loophole.
Yes. I really gotta have to go Zuckerberg. I think he's just mean.
I think they're both
Right.
mean, but I'm thinking, I mean, I'm hearing that Zuckerberg is the one who's actually trading. So he's doing all the training. I don't know. You don't hear about Elon Musk doing training. I mean, when I heard, I hear all about like Zuckerberg. He's done, what is it, jujitsu or something. And he's a fast runner. So I'm going to go with Zuckerberg. I think he's the guy.
Well, on that note, says hopefully that it will never happen. Training camp begins soon. Our next show will be on training camp, what we're looking forward to. So on that note, Niners Talk faithful nation, we bid you adieu.